70 or so years before the battle of Anakin Skywalker. Jedi are dying. One by one, Jedi are being murdered. The Council is made aware, but they already knew. They felt the absence in the Force. Knowing that, while difficult to occur, it is not impossible to kill a Jedi. The galaxy is at a time of relative peace. The Galactic Senate rules, and the Jedi are the enforcement arm, keepers of the peace, and police force. The Council tasks Saul, who is key detective of the Jedi Order, and his Padawan Jeki. They are accompanied by Jedi Knight Yord and his apprentice Tassi. Slowly, they unravel a conspiracy of guilt, love, fear, and suffering. The Senate, seeing how ungoverned the Jedi are working on democratic oversight over the Order and are investigating multiple cases of Jedi policing. Always the antagonist, senators are on both sides of this debate, some feeding the Jedi information, while others are tasked with trying their hardest to bring the Jedi in line to democracy. Force users, calling themselves Sith, are responsible for the murders, with the Master's Acolyte going through phases of tasks to prove herself. Not only are these two, Master and Acolyte, but they are lovers. When Chimere was a young Padawan to a Jedi Master, he was left to die on a dangerous mission. Scarred by this mission and spurned by his Jedi Master, leaving him for dead, the mission in question was about a commune of witches. Not quite Night Sisters, but powerful in the Force as well. They used the life force of young women to power their evil and dark force powers, making them ancient but powerful. The force powers of the witches, though, also brings along some unwanted guests, the Jedi. The Jedi have been hot on their trail for a while and ask that their hostages are freed. When the witches attack with their powers, the Jedi fight back, protecting themselves, as their fellow Jedi are used as puppets to fight them. During the fray, young Chimere is tasked with getting Osha and May out to safety. Knowing these witches are too dangerous and powerful, the Jedi defend themselves by striking down any witch that crosses them in battle. Chimere infiltrates the base and attempts to save Osha and May. The witches detonate their stash of explosives hidden to help hide their trail, hoping to level the base and take all of the Jedi with them, leaving the trail cold. During this chaos, May tragically falls to her death, leaving Osha with the guilt of not having been able to help her or save her sister. Osha is enraged to the Jedi for not helping Chimere. The Jedi assume that Chimere and the sisters didn't make it out alive, as they don't sense them in the Force, and their minds are panicked as they themselves try to make it out alive. But Chimere and Osha survived and see them leave the planet. Chimere sees the pain Osha is going through and wishes to train her for her to use her abilities. For many years, they grow and train together, slowly adopting the title of Master and Acolyte as they study in the ways of the dark side. And now their final mission is at hand. Their love for one another fuels each other. They're both afraid of losing one another. So they will fight with everything they can to stop that from happening. They call themselves Sith. Fearing constant antagonization from the Senate, Saul is tasked with quickly wrapping up this case, as more and more eyes are looking at them. Saul and Jeki find the pattern that the Jedi being killed were the ones on the police mission to save the girls. But by the time they reach Kelnaka with a team of Jedi, it is too late. Chimera and Osha have already defeated him, but catch them as they're trying to escape. Chimera is able to defeat many Jedi, and is able to save Osha from Soul's Padawan Jeki. Though Jeki puts up a fight, Chimera is impressed. Chimera strikes down Jeki in a violent fashion, but not without losing his helmet. With his face truly revealed, Saul recognizes him and is shocked and angered at the loss of his apprentice. Chimera and Osha are able to escape as Saul is left with his fallen Jedi. Chimera and Osha see what they have accomplished and grow even closer than before, truly becoming lovers and testing each other. They hatch their final play. Saul, upon his return to the temple, is angered and wants his revenge, but knows this is not the way of the Jedi. But he is in pain. A coded message is received from Chimera, teasing his loss and showing the bodies of the dead Jedi. He's given coordinates and told to come alone. They know that Saul is vulnerable and won't tell anyone. Saul arrives and confronts Chimera at the base of witches from all of those years ago, and have a truly emotional fight. But the final test is one of the Force, and Osha must kill Saul through the Force powers alone, not by blade or saber. She is able to force choke Saul, who is not balanced and cannot defend himself well enough against the power that Osha is using. Years of boiling hatred and pain have led to this very moment. And with that, she truly is the Acolyte. But there are two who have felt the power of these two growing, and are not thrilled to see their tactics, for it may force their rule of two out of the shadows. Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Plagueis, the true acolyte of the Sith Master Darth Tenebrous. Plagueis reports back to his master that these two may need to be dealt with. The council is made aware of the actions and pass these events off as a spurned ex-Padawans, role-playing as if they were Sith, but not truly. While they are a force to be reckoned with, they will be on their tail. End of Season 1 of The Acolyte. I'm just kidding. None of that actually happened.
It's totally made up. Pure fiction. It's fiction. It's fiction. We made it up.
Do you understand what the Basil is saying?
His name is Basil.
This is really going to be the last time that I want to talk about this series. It pains me to see the state of this franchise. Now, I'm not even going to be talking about the discourse online because it's straight toxic on all sides. But where I am, the quality of the characters, story, action, sets, design, and editing is just subpar in my opinion. I'm going to be splitting the critique into the same three parts that I put Rogue One into: the visuals, the story, and sound. Visuals, I'm not sure who is doing the CG in the series, but there are plenty of scenes that are terribly rendered. I don't want to hear about the problem that this is TV, because this has the reported budget of more than a lot of movies that release to theaters. There are multiple parts, from the speeder bikes to the multiple shots of painfully rendered Coruscant. And how do I know that's what the planet is? Because they keep telling me over and over again and again. This is truly, in my opinion, who this was made for. The lowest common denominator. This is also a personal grief for me. Even in Rogue One, the planet name cards are so lazy to me. But we're on the 6th and 8th episode of a show. I don't need to see the same shot of the Jedi Temple or whatever this building is in the 8th episode. All of a sudden, we're not the Jedi Temple anymore. We're at this high rise, but okay. Anyways, I just don't think any of these shots are particularly interesting to the eye. They don't capture any imagination in its design and framing. It does feel very flat. The blocking does feel very flat. I'm not the largest fan of slow-mo and Hong Kong wire work either in my Star Wars, but it's here, I guess. And some shots are okay with the fight scenes, while others are very ridiculous. While the final fight scene does remind me of some parts of Star Wars SC-38 reinvented, although I will admit, how much more can we do and see with lightsabers and fighting? The lightsabers as well are super dim in the final scene. In the night scene, they do glow more, but that glow is supremely diminished in the daylight. I'm not sure if they are even rotoscoping them in, or are they just clanging plastic tubes together. The sabers clashing as well lack a lot of impact from what we're used to. The city sets in the other episodes do not feel actually lived in. They do feel like sets that have the middle cleared out for the actors to walk through. While in some scenes there are layers of grunge, it doesn't feel like a lived-in universe. It feels too sterile still. And it's really sad to see, because I do believe that some of the directors have worked on other projects that are visually striking. There's just a visual identity that is missing from this series. Even the spaceship chase in the final episode doesn't carry with it a lot of shock or special effect wowness to me. There's nothing extremely memorable about the series besides the design of Chimere, or the Stranger's outfit. His mask is truly memorable and maybe ranked up with some of the rest of the series. I do wish we saw why or how he designed the mask to be that way. Was it to strike fear into the Jedi's hearts while he attacked them? Was it to strike fear into his Acolyte? It sounds like he's been training her for a while. Is it meant to mimic a creature of some kind? It almost looks kind of like a xenomorphish. This is where I'll give the show some props. The fight scenes in episode 5 and 8 do have some standout moments. The veracity of the attacks from Chimere is truly something that the Star Wars universe has kind of missed. Rather than acting like they're just hitting each other with sticks, it finally does feel like lethality is brought back to the table. So with that, I will give the show extreme props for the fight scenes. I think I've just about said all I wanted to really about the visuals. The costumes do feel fairly cheap to me, with some of the costumes kind of changing a couple of episodes in. They start with the yellow and white cloaks for the Jedis, but those are completely dropped by the time we get to the middle with brown cloaks. And then the final episode changing once again with Vernestra donning some type of dress rather than her Jedi robes. The continuity of this time is very confusing to me. Maybe the white cloaks are used for certain things. I was trying to think that maybe they're left during missions, but Yord and his apprentice are on the mission to get Osha, and they're wearing the white cloaks, so not quite sure. Oh yeah, Yord has an apprentice, remember that? Where's she? Don't think we ever saw her again. Unfortunately for the series, it has the dressings of a Star Wars title, but it's the story that's lacking. Actually, all of this is lacking, but the story is definitely lacking.
But before we do, I kind of want to talk to you guys about a couple of creators who are doing a great job of showing the different sides of the fandom. First off, who's talking more about the good side. He is critical on some parts, but he's talking a lot about the good stuff, the morals, the character motivations, the character lessons, that kind of thing. And it's Generation Tech. I think he's doing a wonderful job talking about the show, talking about characters, Saul in particular, and the lessons to kind of learn about it, and talking about the character motivations, which I don't think gets a lot of play on YouTube. And I do think he does a better job of putting it into words better than I can. And I'm kind of super critical about the show. I'm gonna fess up to it. I am super critical. I did not like the show. I found the show to be very flat, and it you'll see in the review. But he does a great job of trying to pull any semblance of lessons, theory crafting, morals, that kind of thing. So be sure to give him a watch. Also, his thoughts on the portrayal of some of the characters, I totally agree with. And again, he's putting it into words better than I can. So, and on the complete other side, we have Mahler and the EFAP team, who have been doing a really great job of breaking down every episode, talking about how stuff doesn't make sense, talking about how there's contradictions from one scene to the other, from one character to the other, from one lesson to the other. One person says one thing, then they say another thing. They do a great job with all of that, and they definitely break it down frame by frame for you. So again, shout out to Mahler and the EFAP team. They are going to be more on the critical side, who are making fun of it, really hate it, talk a major amount of crap on the show. So I just wanted to show both sides of the spectrum. Now, my thoughts.
I find the story to be so devoid of soul. Not that soul. I didn't have any characters that I could attach to or sympathy for, because the story is framing the act of the Jedi as if what they did was bad or evil, meaning they needed to be killed, murdered. And we shouldn't feel any sympathy for them. We're told millions of times that Sol thought he was doing what was right, and honestly, I'm with him. If we look at the situation that played out in the flashback, the Jedi were there because they sensed a vergence, so they're researching it. Now, why aren't the Jedi meditating on this vergence? Why aren't they with the Force? Why are they using metal detector doodads? Not quite sure. Vernestra is able to sense something in the Force by the time she shows up on the planet, but Indara is not able to. We then see that Sol is shocked to have people on this planet. This planet is meant to be void of any life. Not only that, but from what he overhears, what he sees, he mistakenly, or not mistakenly, confirms that this group of women, witches, are using the dark side, and they are going to be doing something to these children, and that there's only a matter of time that until something happens to these kids, they needs to save them. Put this into perspective of an actual policing in real life. Now put yourself in his shoes. I do believe that the policing that we see the Jedi do is justified. And when the Jedi confront the witches, the temperature is turned up way too high. There is not a peaceful voice among any of them, and the conversation doesn't make sense at all. I think they're trying to frame Sol as a groomer or something by showing Osha the lightsaber as if she knows what that is. To her, that's just a shiny tube. She doesn't know what it is. The witches seem all too clear they know what it is. So when the final confrontation happens, and I don't know what is driving Sol to do these actions. He says at the very end that he loves Osha, and I don't feel that at all. I don't feel their companionship. I don't feel the training from them. I don't feel any of that. I don't know if it's Amanda's acting or Li Zhangje, but in the final confrontation, Mother Anastasia does turn into a smoke monster, and Sol does see Osha, or does see May turning into that smoke as well. Fearing for May's life, he decides to act. And then, kind of a slap in the face, Mother Anastasia tells him that she was gonna let Osha go, as if to kind of spite Sol, as if to kind of make fun of what he just did. Yeah, he just stabbed her. Even though she was a smoke monster, she did not became a smoke monster again to get hit by the lightsaber. Was this all on purpose? It is so convoluted. It's as if they wanted the story to be something and they had to write their way around it, versus the characters and the situation and who the characters are in that situation carrying the scene. The whole problem with the rest of the story is that it all is based upon this police action. And I don't know why Torben felt the need to end himself. He was brainwashed. He was brain R-worded, to be honest, by Mother Anastasia. She basically got into his head and was able to manipulate him in some way. But he is a little whiny wimp for wanting to go home after, I think they said 7 weeks? It's only been 7 weeks that they've been on this planet, and he wants to go home and is willing to compromise the entire mission. How does this dude become a Jedi Master in 16 years? Please tell me that. And he's been in this meditative state for 10 years? So that means 6 years after this incident, he becomes a Jedi Master and then takes a vow of silence and meditates for 10 years. This makes no sense. And then again, I don't understand how Kelnaka feels like he deserves to be banished from the order or, anything. He got brainwashed into attacking his friends and he didn't really do anything. So for him to live in seclusion, it doesn't really fly. That's what I mean about the entire rest of the show being based off of this police action. This police action of the Jedi needs to be egregious, atrocious, and invalid enough for shame to be put upon our characters in the current timeline. And I don't believe this passes the smell test of shame. While it may be regretful, I think they were within their rights. There is a lot of questions with the story, a lot of confusion. But again, it's because the storytellers need this to be looked down upon, need to be looked in a certain light for the rest of the story to work. From this action, May is able to get trained by Chimere, who is then going to initiate her plan to kill the Jedi of this mission. While she is able to kill the first Jedi with a blade, the next Jedi with Torben, she basically just shows up with poison and he goes, yeah, I want to kill myself. It is unearned. I think that is the big word of this review. It is going to be unearned. The tears of Saul at the end, unearned. The impact of Torben ending himself, unearned. Vernestra even being able to walk in the presence of Yoda with a shade of guilt, and Yoda to not sense it and immediately do something about it. Unearned. And oh man, don't even get me on the Yoda and Plagueis cameos. So unearned. The pacing of the story is again all over the place. The tone, all over the place. The tone of this show, it seemed like it was meant to be for an adult audience. The poster, the marketing material itself, having blood. The sexuality of Osha and Chimere is so on the nose. The quote-unquote seduction. Again, while I'm all for it, the dark side to me is passion, is selfishness. It is the flesh. I'm all for it. But when I see and hear that this is meant for children, I kind of get confused. Star Wars Jedi Adventures is for children. Clone Wars is for children. While on the adult side, I would say, this, I don't think I would have my kids watch this. But that's just me. She literally dick checks him at one point. You can watch it. With that tone being all over the place, the slapstick comedy in certain scenes from certain episodes just doesn't land and leaves the audience confused. If you're having a serious show about guilt, about dark and light, about accidents, about selfishness, about things like this, the tone should match. Not to say that there can't be humor or parts that are humorous. I do think levity is important in these dark parts. And when you have slapstick parts of Basil attacking May in the ship and then a squirting of her face and then her going, ugh! it just doesn't fly. It doesn't pass the test at all. It doesn't pass the smell test at all. You're literally one episode removed from two major characters of your story being murdered. Jecki and Jord, who I feel are left disserviced. We see scenes with them and we know their characterizations, but there's nothing really making us sympathetic for these characters and their deaths. There could have been so much more play with Jord being a newly christened knight, and this is his first mission, and him tackling that fear. There could have been real growth with him and Osha. They're old friends. Osha even says, "Jord, my old friend." And the only thing that happens after his death is Osha confronting Kymir that you killed Jord. And then Kymir says, yeah, he was going to arrest you. The characters that they set up are supremely left unserved. I particularly feel bad for Jecki too. You see Jecki and Osha bonding, saying they're going to hang out at a cantina and it's going to be awesome. And then Jecki dies, is killed by Kymir. I'm just going to keep calling him Kymir, by the way. I don't like the stranger. And Osha, in literally the next episode, shacks up with Kymir. That is what I mean when I say that the writers seem like they have certain messaging, a certain way that the audience needs to feel, but they did not write themselves, they did not write the story to get the audience there. There is ideas here, ideas of guilt, being unbalanced, love, passion. This show truly could have been an exploration on the dark side of how Jedi fall, how human or quote unquote mortal emotions can turn and be used by the dark side. How a Jedi, while, we do have Anakin thinking in their best interest, can be corrupted by matters of the heart. Again, I don't feel that from this show, and I do believe that it is a tragedy. And that's why I say that this review does pain me. I see what people are going for with this story, but it just isn't there. Let's talk about the acting for a second as well. Lee Jong-jae does his best with material that's given to him. And at the end, I really don't like his character because I feel like he is just sniveling, really. He doesn't own up to the fact that what he did was right. He feels like what he did was wrong, but then his lips are saying something different. Sol was the character that I was attaching to because it did feel like a Qui-Gon thing. And I don't know if that's what the show was meant to do. Was it meant to show Sol as a Qui-Gon-like character, but then flip the script on you and make you feel like, haha, you like this bad guy all along? I do applaud him for learning English to play this role, but I do believe that the emotional impact of the show is damaged by his lack of understanding of the language. And again, God bless him for learning the language. Amandla, I do believe that they could have portrayed May and Osha different than what we got on the screen. Amandla does change her voice for May, but then in the end, that gets confusing because then Osha has a deeper voice. The characterization of both of these characters is not differentiated enough. And again, it's very hard to find sympathy to attach to for these characters because there isn't much shown. While that may not be Amandla's fault, her line delivery still is sort of mocked. The very first line of the series is, besides "Where's your Jedi?" it is like "Have at ye," and it's laughed at. So again, when we're talking tone, is this line meant to be funny? Is this line meant to be ridiculous? But she is playing it off as if she's dead serious. Now, the characters in that scene could be laughing because there's no way they think that they could pass the fighting test against a Jedi, I laughed with it because it was quite ridiculous. And it does seem that Amandla has the same look on her face in multiple situations that doesn't warrant that face per se. These are two different characters who've lived two different lives, but while the story again says that this is the same person, it's not. It makes no sense. It's not explained. They definitely want to see a season 2. Jecki, Daphne Keene, I don't know what her character was supposed to be. She does call Saul out on multiple occasions on how Saul is kind of contradictory to himself and he shouldn't be so attached to Osha. But again, the characterization here, there are lines that are delivered like, oh, that's Basil. Like, oh, what?
What's that? What's Basil?
Not her fault. I get it. But it's kind of a nothing burger. The characterization of Yord, at least we know who his character is. He is a brand new knight. He is proud of himself. But then again, he is tossed aside like nothing. And he's played off as kind of made fun of. Jecki and Osha make fun of him before the mission, and this is the mission that costs him his life. Again, talking about how the tone doesn't feel right in many of these scenes. Even the music in this scene is meant to play up the comedic, humorous parts of this. But I think the dude playing Yord did well enough. Vernestra, or the lady playing Vernestra, God, what's her name? Rebecca Henderson playing Vernestra, really, the makeup on her skull cap is atrocious. Every single episode, even on my iPad, I can tell the line of the skull cap and the paint that they used. Truly, truly sad what they did with this character. And not only that, the character is played by Rebecca so stalely. There are parts that are meant to be humorous, but it just doesn't feel right. And she has like the same speaking patterns throughout. She has like one expression throughout the entire show. And my God, is her character Vernestra the most evil out of any of the characters. Not only is it assumed that Vernestra tortured Chimere, but she also is able to lie to Yoda. She's able to lie for Saul. She lies all over the place to cover this up. I cannot believe that they turned this character, who is in other titles, into basically an arbiter of evil and corruption. But maybe that's the idea. That the Jedi and their order corrupts the innocent, and the organization itself is corrupting. I don't know. The real star of the show is the dude playing the Stranger or Chimere, Manny Jacinto. Dude, I hope the best for him. He is able to show such manic in the attack scene in episode 5. He's able to play off the quirky sidekick in episode 2 and 4, and then he's able to play the seductive man. He's able to play that off well as well. Very good job to him. I give him major props. And even in those scenes too, it's quite humorous to see Amandla trying to play off of him. Again, we have very stiff lines. Stiff. Just Amandla's facial expressions are very weird in some cases, and it doesn't play well with the act that's happening on screen. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but yeah. Hope the best for Manny. The sound. The music is forgettable. While the music does homage other themes within the Star Wars universe, these themes are left on the floor. They're left ambiguous. There's no reason for such themes, including the Kylo Ren theme being used multiple times. I saw a great amount of discourse of people online saying that Chimere is the first Knight of Ren, which, again, when you think about it, is quite sad because the Knights of Ren are thrown to the side in Rise of Skywalker as if they were just putty. Again, no build-up, they just look cool. While I know Boba Fett looked cool in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, There is no time for the Knights of Ren to gain the same amount of popularity. The rest of the music is fairly meh, unnoticeable, and I'm not even going to talk about pop music being in Star Wars. I don't like that. Nothing against the song. I actually do like the song, and I really do like Victoria Monet, but to me, Star Wars is not this type of music. The Star Wars universe has a soundtrack, and if that soundtrack isn't followed, then it kind of doesn't fit. Sure, we have aliens singing their own language at a jazz club, or Mandalorian having certain flutes or wind instruments. But to me, if you're dealing with the Force, if you're dealing with the Jedi, there is a certain soundtrack that goes along with it. Sound effects are fairly good. A+. Not much to really say about that, but the soundtrack itself is what I have the biggest problem with. There's a lot of reuse of themes within the Star Wars universe that have no meaning. It's unearned. All in all, I am just truly sad that this series was not a full in deep exploration of the dark side. They could have set the story 300 years before the Battle of Yavin and explored the Sith, explored, the masters of Tenebris, the masters of even before Tenebris. They could have set it anywhere, but they purposely decided to set it in this exact time and to have Plagueis and for it to line up with the prequels. I think if it was 400 years, 300 years before the Battle of Yavin and totally removed, I don't think it would hurt as much. I'm also not particularly a lore master. While I do have a, I would say, master level knowledge on the movies, Clone Wars I've only watched maybe once or twice throughout. The expanded novels and everything else, I'm really not super aware, and I don't remember many points from them. So by no means am I a master of lore, master of the expanded universe, and a master of the novels and other titles, comics, things like that have come out. But they wanted this series to mean something to the other Star Wars storylines. This was purposeful, and it was not an exploration of the Sith, not a full and in-depth exploration of acolytes. I don't know if it was studio interference, corporate interference, not letting the creatives go where they wanted to. I would really love a post-mortem on this series and the development of it. But as it sits right now, I do believe it is a failure for me. If you like the show, God bless you. If you don't like the show, same thing. For me, it was devoid of heart, devoid of soul, and every tear on the screen was unearned near the end of the story. And again, I don't really want to watch this again. It's not going to be in my watch again pile. It's not like Andor. It just left me feeling quite empty. Hey, thank you so much for watching the video. If you like what I do here, feel free to subscribe. Also, feel free to smash the like button. It really does help out push the channel to new people. Let me know your thoughts on the Acolyte, and please be civil in the comments. I know that's like telling dog not to eat a steak, but please, let's have actual discourse on the quality of the creation, of the story, of the art form. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.